End of the year is here, time to talk about those 5 best reads of 2024. Just as a quick caveat, these reads are in no particular order, and additionally, I am not including my December reads. I've read about 2.5 books at this point in time. The one I'm halfway through probably would have been on this list if I could have waited longer to record the video. Additionally, Kate C. Wells is coming out with the next in the Rejected Mate series. While the last time she did this, I predicted it would have been a 5-star read and it ended up being like a 3. I still think this could be a 5-star read that would have made it onto the list. But starting with number 5, A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is a loosely based on like Dracula's bride story that focuses specifically on the experience of those 3 brides, them escaping Dracula, and then like their aftermath. I knew I would like this story going into it. I didn't know how much I was going to love it until I started reading the prose, and I could just see how melodic and beautiful and artsy they were. Add to that an epistolary style, a really like liberal, broadly defined idea of love and companionship, and this is just winning for me on all cylinders. I really want to read more from S.T. Gibson. I'm definitely planning to pick up more of her books in the future. Forgotten Sisters by Cynthia, Pelayo. This is a modern gothic novel set in Chicago that interweaves fairy tale and historical elements into the narrative. I have a whole standalone video here talking about all of the gothic stuff and why I love it. I think when I finished it originally, it had taken so long and had gotten so winding and meandering that I knew I enjoyed it, but I was also like a little bit relieved for it to be over. But in continually like thinking about it in my head as the years gone on and revisiting it, I realized that it's just like head and shoulders above a lot of the other things that I've read this year. It's something that's given me a really long chew time on it. I have enjoyed thinking about it and like seeing how artfully everything was put together, enjoying those narrative prose, enjoying like both the subtle and obvious elements, and like the way it keeps redefining its scope and like refolding everything into this one singular story. I don't tend to read a lot of art in my typical diet, but I would definitely put this one up there as something that you could qualify not just as like entertainment, but additionally as like art and thoughtfully, meaningfully done that's saying something and driving to a head point. Pelayo's got something else coming in 2025. I'm definitely reading that, and I do want to get to her backlist at some point in time. There's just only so much time in a day. The Devil and Mrs. Davenport by Paulette Kennedy. I have a dedicated review for this book here, and I really enjoyed both like the historical back in time element here, but also the kind of story it was saying and the way that it was written. A really fun, like emotional ride about this housewife who finds out that she can talk to the dead and then like is dealing with this realization while she's also dealing with the fact she's in an abusive marriage and needs to get out. I think we probably could have done without the very, very ending of it, but up until then I had a really good time. I think everything weaves really well. I think it keeps great pacing, intrigue, and tension. Disseverment by Z.C. Krol. I also have a video that goes over this one in detail. This is a 62-page novella extreme horror. I might be suffering a little bit from recency bias by putting it here on this list, but this book gave me a full out-of-body terror experience in a way that was good. I was enjoying the ride, having a fun time, even though it like repulsed me and terrified me on that like visceral level. It was still something that I would say is like manageable, enjoyable versus like traumatic and difficult. I think it walks that line between traumatic and scary and fun in a very unique and interesting way. It's definitely one of the best purely horror-driven books I've read in years. I've got a couple of what I would consider horror comedies in the past years that might have been better, but as far as executing for sheer terror, Disseverment is the way to go. That said, what I think is 5 stars is the first 75%. The last 25 loses me entirely, but that first 75% is so flippin' good. And then last is gonna be The Haar by David Sodergren. This one's winning a little bit just for its unusual protagonist, who is this 70-year-old Muriel. I love how she's characterized. She feels like a real and true person and like a gem of a human being that you want good good things for her, even as like her whole world is getting destroyed around her. I was legitimately afraid for her because it did feel like she and her old folks community was in like this helpless state, physically and financially being bullied and abused in a way that I found heinous. Then you throw like a monster from the sea into the mix and things really go pear-shaped. Because of the descriptions in this book and the way some of the kills are described, I think this tips into like extreme horror, but it takes you a very long time to get to that level. And before that, it's just excellent characterization, excellent like world building, a lot of like interpersonal communication between Muriel and her dead husband and this sea creature. Like, it's all done so well and it's so interesting, and it's like, you know, can't be leading anywhere good, because how could there be a happy ending to the setup of this story where a billionaire is taking over her town for a golf course and she is being like forcibly moved by a cruel and inhumane force. The story goes in unexpected ways. I was never 100% sure what it was doing or why it was doing it, and even at the end, though I had like a specific interpretation of what happened and what it meant, I read this in a book group and I got to see a bunch of people's interpretations of what was happening and what it meant, and I could see that most of us had not interpreted it the same way. And it also led me to realize that personally I'd made a lot of different like logical leaps and jumps, like of course this meant this, which meant this, which meant this, and had sort of like created my own headcanon for this story. But even when I pulled that back, when I was thinking about the story as a whole, what bare bones had actually happened or like I had actually witnessed and what that could mean, it was still a lot that I could be thinking about and like a lot of a fun ride to go on. So those are going to be my 5 best reads of 2024, not counting December. And talk to me in those comments below. What was your favorite book this past year? And give me a one-liner on why. And as always, keep reading.